Everybody, welcome to Culturama Saturday, and we're talking to Andrew Turner and Monica Fernandez, who are publishers. And Andrew Turner did East Jasmine Review. Are you still you're still running it? I think you're still in charge of everything.
I do. I'm the publisher, and then Charisse is the editor-in-chief. She's in charge of most of it. I just do most of the money and then pick up any slack that needs picking up.
Okay, and he's been doing that for a while, and he's it's a small local magazine that I think has large impact, and I think it's a really interesting magazine, and it's well, I was going to say it's in our area, but I guess if we consider the world our area, then yes, that's true. And although it's local, you take things that are not local. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we've published people from the UK, we've published people from Africa, and I think some people from Asia, and of course, people in the US as well.
We hope soon some from New Zealand and Alaska too. Yeah. And we have this, and we have Monica Fernandez, and I'm just so proud right now because Monica is one of my former students, and she is now, I would say, of what you call the small publishers, small literary publishers. You work for Red Hen, which is kind of the biggest. Maybe there's Copper Canyon, maybe there's debate on who's the biggest. That's a strange sort of thing it sounds strange, sounds like but it's a publisher that focuses on art, focuses on poetry, focuses on things that don't generally make a profit, but they do it, and they make a pretty good profit. That's Red Hen Press. And you're in publicity, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So my official title is media manager, but I pretty much just publicity and social media, all that stuff.
In a place like Red Hen, though, that has, I don't know how many employees, probably 20, 30?
We have 10. We have 10, yeah, 10 paid staff members, and then everybody else that works with us is just an intern. Okay. We have a couple of kind of lead interns that receive stipends. Otherwise, everybody else is kind of an unpaid volunteer. So we are working towards kind of building capital so that we can offer more fellowships and paid positions for our interns.
Okay, that's great. And your interns go off and do really great things.
They do, yeah. We actually just had one hired. We had one hired by HarperCollins and then one hired by Scholastic in the last year. So incredible things they go on to do.
Now, you're in a place with 10 employees. Is it fair to say that you pretty much know all aspects of the job? Like all aspects of the, yeah. For
the most part. I mean, there's also, because we're a nonprofit, there's a development and fundraising side that I'm not as familiar with, but I do kind of help with, promoting the fundraisers and stuff like that. But otherwise, all aspects of the actual publication of work, I am familiar with, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna introduce some of the functionality on Zoom, and there's a reason for it. First of all, if you're a little hard of hearing like I am, there's live transcript and it's pretty good. And I'm sitting here watching it. Also, if you're not comfortable or you don't have the computer functionality to come and talk, there's a chat function, and you just turn on your chat, and then you can have questions that way. And I'm happy to take any questions. This is good. We've got kind of a smaller group here, so you can ask anything you want from somebody who's a book publisher and somebody who is a magazine publisher, right? So anything from poetry collections to book collections to short stories to poems to essays, etc. Okay, so why don't we just get started with how people can reach you if they want to submit something, and either one of you can go. And what should they do?
Ooh, you caught me on the spot, Johnson. I have to go to our website. So I'm gonna put in 2 links. One is our website, and let me make sure it goes here. So here is our website. So we are going to be publishing. We're going to be transitioning away from magazine like style publishing to more online, so you can just go to our website and read it. Mostly because we were having a hard time kind of putting things together. So this way it's going to be a little bit easier for us. And then we also have a submittable, but I'm not going to put that up just yet because we're not really reading anything at the moment. It'll probably be pretty soon. But we're, with pandemic and everything, we put out a, I think I still have it. Yes, we put out this fantastic book. It's called Tell Me More, and it's Me Too stories. So it's definitely not an easy read, but it is an important one. So after we did that, which came out, I think last year, we've been trying to kind of get back into getting some publishing done, but that took quite a lot out of us, as I'm sure Monica knows. Once you do one book, you're like, oh God, I'm so done. You're just like, you can't do anything for a while. So right now we're kind of in the middle of restructuring, reorganizing, kind of getting our collective-ish together. But yeah, I put the website in the chat if you want to take a look at it. It's just eastjasminereview.com. You can, I think we have a couple things up there, so you can kind of read a couple stories. You can read some reviews. But basically, the things that we publish is going to be short fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, reviews, and we might do some articles and stuff as well. But that's kind of the general thing that we publish. I think I probably went a little bit off topic there, but.
No, that's great. And I love that you're making the move online. 25 years ago, I would have said, don't publish online. It's not legitimate. And now it's completely legitimate,
Yeah, that's what most everyone does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. And Monica, how do people send things to you, and what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so Red Hen, as John mentioned, is a book publisher, so we accept full-length manuscripts. Our submittable is here in the chat. We also offer some book publication awards. So our general submissions is open year-round. You don't need a literary agent to submit, so you can just submit your work. And then if you qualify for any of the awards that may be open, we always recommend people submit to the awards as well. Mostly because the awards pool is slightly smaller than the general submissions. Red Hen gets 3,000 to 5,000 submissions a year, and we publish like 26, 27 books every year. So obviously those slots are very hard to come by. But we always reserve slots for the book awards. So you have a much better chance of kind of being selected for an award than from the general submissions pile. So all of the kind of like submission guidelines, all of the word counts, all of that stuff is in our submittable. And then I will also mention that Red Hen has a sister publication called the Los Angeles Review, which is a literary journal. And so we take shorter pieces there. So just like a poem, a short story, an essay. This is also like East Jasmine Review. It transitioned to online publication like 2 years ago or something. And we do like one print edition a year of kind of like the best of selected by our editors. But yeah, so if you feel like you aren't ready to submit a full length manuscript, but you want to start getting your stuff out there, definitely submit to the Los Angeles Review or to obviously East Jasmine Review. We always recommend kind of especially new and budding authors, just get their work out there. And as I'm sure you've heard from John many, many times before, it's submit, and just try and get your work everywhere.
If you want to hear me say that later today, I'm doing a publication basics class in the afternoon. I want to put a plug in for your contests because I know of a lot of really famous people who became famous poets by winning that contest, including Tony Barnstone. I believe that was his first publication. And I know Ron Kirchie as well, right? These are the big names for Los Angeles. I'm trying to think of the name of the woman whose work I love, who won the contest.
We have, so we published Maggie Smith before, Lamp of the Body. I'm not sure if that was her first publication, but she did win one of our poetry awards, and obviously has gone on to be incredible. We published Douglas Kearney, but I don't think that he was a contest winner. But he has obviously gone on to be nominated for a National Book Award. So we've kind of started, we like to say we've started the careers of a lot of incredible authors. And it's just such an honor to be a part of their journey. So who knows, maybe if you publish with Red Hen, that could be the first step in your journey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Red Hen is especially well known for that. So I would suggest entering their contests. Okay, does anybody have any questions? And I feel, Andrew, like I cut you off there. You were about to say something.
I'm good.
Does anybody have any questions about? We've got a small group here. You can be as granular as you like, right? But, if not, okay. So, Monica, you said you get about 3,000 submissions a year, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those are completely inappropriate, and even if they were great, would not be published by you?
You know, I'm not entirely sure. I don't actually see all of the submissions. They don't go through my department. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but it is, I'm sure, a fair amount, maybe at least 20% or something, of completely just not the right fit for us, or kind of like, yeah, it's all just about, and this is something that I recommend to all authors every time I do some kind of talk like this. It's just doing your research for the presses that you submit to, and just making sure that the stuff that you write will be a good fit for them. It's just like a job interview. You have to want it, and we can tell if you want it or not. Or we can tell if it's just like a blanket kind of submission that you didn't read our website. You know, if you're submitting, so Red Hen doesn't really do like genres, so we don't do sci-fi or fantasy or romance or anything like that. We've never done it before. That's not to say we won't ever, but it's just not really something that we actively are looking for. So most people, like, if they want to submit something like that, they should kind of query our editor first, or something like that. And then oftentimes we kind of just I get a lot of phone calls from people that are like, how do I submit a poem to you? And I'm like, well, we're a book publisher, so we need a little bit more than one poem. So it's just about doing your research and kind of just looking it up online, and just making sure that your submissions are clean and exactly as what we request. And I know that's really tedious because so many different presses and journals and magazines and stuff like that have very different kind of submission guidelines and stuff. It's all particular to that one place, but it's important that you kind of follow directions.
One thing I would say about Harry Potter is, you know, it was famously rejected a number of times, and best favor they could have done for that author was J.K. Rowling's was to reject it, because it found the right publisher that could promote it correctly. Mm-hmm. And obviously it was promoted correctly. So maybe we can just start off with just general information, general suggestions that you have, and maybe start with Drew and then go to Monica.
Yeah, so I know Monica and I were also both writers. So it's really interesting to be on both sides of the equation. Like, on the one hand, I'm really lazy as a writer and I don't want to read all the guidelines and I don't care sometimes. On the other hand, I'm like, well, I'm a publisher, so I know I should. So, like, if you have the time, like, at least try to read something, or like look up, like, if you know, like, I'll look up the books that Red Hen Press publishes. And even if you don't read the whole thing, just like maybe go to your local bookstore or go to your library, find something they published, read a page. You know, for any magazine you're doing, just like, okay, maybe like go look. You don't have to read all the stories, but sometimes if you read it, you really like it, go ahead, read it. That's also fun. But like, just like kind of do a little bit of research, like maybe read a poem, read a story. Even if you don't have time for even that, because I know some people like are really busy, there's other things that are a little bit more important. at least read the submission guidelines and try to follow them. Like, if they're not perfect, like, we just kind of get annoyed. Like, I know that there's some publishers, like, it needs to be in Times New Roman, 12-point font, double space. It's like, if we ask for a different font, as long as it's not papyrus or something terrible I can't read, it's fine. It's not a big deal. But at least try to read the submissions like, okay, we don't publish, graphic violence. Don't send us your graphic violence. And most of the submission guidelines, like, are one for taste, and then two, especially for East Jasmine, because we kind of specialize in underrepresented voices and things like that, or we're trying to, we don't want to have, some certain types of stories. So we say, we don't want gratuitous violence. Some publishers don't care. Some do, just kind of at least, like, read through the guidelines, make sure that, if you don't see your story type in there, we have emails. So we get excited, we get an email that's like not spam. So, like, be like, oh, hey, I wrote this story that's a little bit like this, is that something I should submit? You don't even have to give us a story, like, don't give us a story to read. Just like, hey, can I, is this something that you might publish? And then we can say yes or no, or yeah, go ahead and submit it, or, that's not for us. And, we'll get back to you probably within a couple days. If it's just a super quick question like that, within a day or two, most likely. If it's, otherwise, if you submit the story, it may take us 6 months to get to it, depending. And then we say no, because it's not part of our guidelines. So you're just kind of having that story sit out there. But that's the kind of the very basics is like Monica said, like, at least read the guidelines and try to follow them as best you can. If it's not perfect, like, we get it, but at least try to follow what we publish type of thing. Like, if the specifics aren't correct, if you have a couple fonts off or margins off or whatever, it's like, we don't really care that much unless it's hard to read, and then we'll reformat it. But we don't want to do that work because we're lazy.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, we especially at Red Hen, I mean, I am always happy to kind of like answer questions via email. So if anybody is kind of like unsure about like if we would take a certain story or whatever, then yeah, as Andrew said, it's best to shoot an email and just be like, I am hoping to submit to you, but I'm not sure if this fits. Can you let me know? Yeah, and usually we're very quick at getting back to you on stuff like that. And it's just a lot easier for all parties involved to know up front kind of like what you're looking for, so that you can either check us off your list or cross us off your list, so that you kind of know. But I have a question for you all. Is there anybody here that that is actually hoping to like get a career in publishing, or is everybody kind of just a writer and is hoping to find out how to get published?
That's a good question.
Nothing. Okay.
I've never thought about it. Like, I mean, I've never thought about it.
Yeah,
it's something I would think about, actually.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's this career just kind of fell on me. So as Andrew had mentioned, both of us are writers, and as John mentioned, I was in John's creative writing class, and I was also in the creative writing club at ModStack when I attended. And so I had always approached publishing as a writer, and then I ended up taking a publishing master's course in England, and that's when it was like a joint creative writing and publishing course. So I learned kind of both sides. And then part of it was I was an intern at an independent publishing company over in London. And that's how I kind of learned, like, this is really fun. I like doing exactly what I'm doing, which is like the publicity and promotion of books. I find that just super, super fun and very creative. And yeah, so after I did that course, I was kind of like looking for jobs in publishing, and I never thought about being in publishing before, but yeah, like if it's something that you feel like is interesting to you, I have many ways to, I have a lot of advice for people who kind of want to try and break into the industry. And it actually just starts at places like this, where you're kind of communicating with publishers and magazine editors and all of that stuff, and just learning the ropes.
I'm going to put in a plug for Carrie here. She lives in Pasadena, and she's a very, very good writer. So Red Hand seems like a really great fit for me. For
Oh, great.
so
I worked at Romans shortly for a short time, and so I got a little bit of exposure to the book industry there. I didn't think being a bookseller was a great fit for me, but I thought maybe I would go back and in a different capacity later on in my career. So
we're starting to get some questions here.
Yeah.
The first question, Monica, London, England?
Yes. Yeah. So I took my course at City University, London, so central London.
I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I think Perry might be near London, Ontario. That's what
Got it. Okay. Yeah. London, England.
And then then they ask, is there some sort of algorithm you use for promoting new books?
I don't think that there's any algorithm that we use. What we do is we kind of just plug in all of this information. We call it metadata. It is anything about the book, from obviously the author bio and the book description, to keywords. So anything that like you would tag a book with on Instagram or whatever. Comp titles, so comparable books released within the last 3 years from, so comp titles are actually very important, because we don't compare our books to like bestsellers like Harry Potter or something like that. In small press publishing, it's important to kind of pick other small press books that you feel like will do kind of like a similar in sales. So we don't oversell it, and people are kind of, it's a realistic, like comparable title. So we do comp titles, and then the algorithms kind of work themselves. And that's really all kind of just like Amazon stuff and like Barnes and Noble stuff. But we plug all of that information into one central source, and then it feeds out to the rest of the internet. And it takes a while, but yeah.
So if they're going to send you something, they should send it to, they should take a look at, like, whether it said Copper Canyon and other publishers like that. What would it be like? Is Autumn House, would you think of them as?
So I don't know off the top of my head, but I remember that there is like what is affectionately referred to as the Indie 8, which are like, so there's like the Big 5, which I think is turning into like the Big 4 now.
Yeah.
And then there's what we call the Indie 8, and I know that Red Hen is one of them. Copper Canyon, Grey Wolf, Coffee House, and I don't remember the rest of them. I feel like Autumn House may be, but yeah, there are apparently 8 other like larger independent publishing houses that are kind of like the major ones around the country. So if Red Hen's not a good fit for you, you can definitely kind of look into the rest of the Indie 8.
Well, then Perry's third comment is that they're trying to publish their current chapbook, self-publish it, and maybe have some advice for that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm taking on. Andrew, do you have anything to say about self-publishing?
The easiest thing is if you want to do it on Amazon, you can have somebody do formatting for you, or if you can do the formatting yourself, you can do that. But they'll do print on demand. There's also, we published our book through Booklib, I think. So there's other print on demand ones that you want to do. It really depends on if you want to just print it and sell it, or if you want to sell it in an online marketplace as well. But with some of them, like with Amazon, you have to publish it with Amazon to get it on Amazon. And then the same thing with like Barnes and Noble, you have to, I think they may have a print. If they don't, they might have other ways to get it on there, but it really depends on what you're trying to do. Like if you want to do online or in-person sales.
Yeah, we usually recommend a thing called, I'll type it in here. It's called Ingram Spark.
Yeah.
So Ingram Spark is also a self-publishing model, but we recommend Ingram Spark because bookstores will then be able to stock your books. If you self-publish on Amazon, bookstores typically actually don't stock them, mostly because it's an exclusively Amazon like publication, and so it's print on demand. So people can order it and get like a physical book, but you can only buy it from Amazon. So Ingram Spark is a great tool if you want kind of like distribution in other bookstores or something like that. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, that's a good one. And they Ingram also runs the indie press thing, right?
Bookshop.org.
Something like that. Yeah, they do. It's a more of a distribution really than anything else. But yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Lots of questions.
Yeah, Joy asks, Monica, could you please go over some of the ways that you publicize book that you publish?
Absolutely. So I do a lot. I usually start I send out what we call a publicity primer 12 months before the book actually comes out. This is just to let all of our authors know kind of how to start preparing and what Red Hen will be doing on their behalf. At Red Hen, we always stress that it's like a 50-50 partnership. So we do rely a lot on the author to make efforts and to actually we also have the author schedule their own tour, and mostly because logistically it's so much easier for the author to be able to do that themselves. And it's also way more beneficial for the author to do it themselves because they form that relationship with those venues and those bookstores. So if they don't happen to publish with Red Hen for their next book, they still have that connection with that bookstore, so they can continue going back to that bookstore over and over again. So that's why it's really beneficial for the author to plan their tour. I start about 6 to 9 months before the book comes out is when we start sending out kind of ARCs for review. I also submit sorry?
Could you define ARC?
Yes, an ARC is an advanced reader copy. So I don't have any examples, but it's a pre-publication physical copy, and it's usually before any copy editing has been done. So it's like a rough cut or anything like that, and we send that out as like a preview to reviewers, and that goes to places like industry.
What Carrie's holding up.
Yeah. So industry arts, so like Kirkus reviews, Forward reviews, the New York Times, Oprah Magazine, LA Times, Los Angeles Review of Books, New York Review of Books, Publishers Weekly. So we send it out. I have a default list that I send all of our ARCs out to. It's about 20 to 25, and it depends on if it's prose or poetry. So that starts very early, and that is trying to get pre-publication reviews, so before the book comes out, so that we can kind of generate some buzz and get on some lists and stuff like that. Otherwise, it's a lot of social media, obviously, and then the rest of the publicity mostly comes from marketing, which is the metadata that I mentioned. And so the stronger the metadata is, the more visible it will be across the internet. So that's why we always request that our authors kind of send us really strong metadata. And then we also have a sales representative team. So Red Hen's books are distributed through Ingram Publisher Services, which is underneath the umbrella of Ingram. And Ingram is the largest book distribution company, I think, in the world, if not in the US. And so we have a whole team from Ingram that go out to bookstores and like talk to these booksellers and are pitching our books for us. And so it's important that they really enjoy our books, because they represent not only Red Hen titles, but like many other publishers and their titles as well. So they have like a whole host of books that they're trying to like pitch to these booksellers. So it's kind of really important that we make a good impression on our sales team so that they can be the ones that are championing our books out on the field. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, a lot of other partnerships with the authors, they reach out to their own contacts, their personal contacts, and yeah, I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time. I'm so sorry, Andrew.
Well, the next
okay.
question is actually directed to you. So
I know, but I'm okay. Hopefully that was a good enough answer for that.
Andrew, did I just cut you out there, Andrew? Sorry.
No, I was actually just taking a look because I did some work with a small publisher who was publishing their own work, and I was trying to find because you were talking about the metadata. I was trying to find the metadata work that we did, and I think I might have it somewhere, but if you have if it's a question I need to answer, I will go ahead and answer it while I still look for that.
Okay, so we can come back to this, and I think it's important. How do you promote your books?
Yeah.
Or any of your work? But just while Andrew's looking at that, Monica, somebody wants to know. Carrie wants to know how to apply for this. Where should you submit a resume? What kind of internships are there, etc.?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for putting that link in the chat, John. So internships are on a rolling basis. It depends on kind of the opening and capacity per department. More information about the departments that we offer is in the link that John just dropped in the chat. And then if you want to apply, you would just send your resume and cover letter to the department head. And I'm pretty sure that information is on the website, depending on the department that you select. So it looks like it goes to a general jobs@redhen.org, but I would also recommend sending the email, your resume and cover letter kind of directly to the staff member in question, which you can find. Our staff is here. And all of our contact information is also on that. The jobs@redhen.org email, it had been programmed to send us resumes kind of like directly. So like if it was like for my department, then it would shoot that email from the jobs email to my email. And I think it got disconnected somehow. So we haven't been as good at checking the actual jobs@redhen.org email. So really just best to send it directly to whoever would be the kind of the direct supervisor of the position. So right now, I'm pretty sure most departments are full, and then obviously, so we actually take 2 weeks off at the end of the year. So starting December 17th, we will be closed until the new year. So right now, if you apply for anything, we will probably like schedule an interview, but then you'd start in the new year, something like that. So, and then our internships are also very flexible. They work around work schedules, school schedules, family schedules, stuff like that. We usually request like a minimum of 2 full days, just so that you can kind of get your bearings and actually kind of have enough time to work on stuff and complete things. But if you can't do kind of like 2 full days, we can kind of like break that out into like 4 half days or something like that. Red Hen is also we're on a 4-day work week. So we are closed on Fridays, which is very nice. It started off as a pandemic thing, but we all just really enjoyed that mental health time back. And our bosses have been very kind in acknowledging that. And so I'm pretty sure it's a permanent fixture. Yeah.
So I found the stuff if you want me to share it, John.
Please.
Okay, so, oh God, which one is it? Okay, so this is I think a tip sheet. So this is kind of what you're talking about, Monica. So I tried to block out names and stuff just in case the person doesn't want it there, but you have like the, the keynote, the description, selling points. So this is stuff the author and the publisher sometimes work together on. Sometimes it's just the author. You have comparable titles. This is about memoirs, so there's a lot of memoirs, and it's about rock and roll. So those are the titles you're going to see here. The target audience that the author's going for as well. So this is just kind of like a the metadata kind of that Monica was talking about. And then I'm going to show another thing, which is like jacket copies and stuff. So you have like taglines that you can do. These are also part of the metadata, long form copy. So like things that go on the back of the book that you can, and a lot of the stuff is very similar. It's like you write the stuff once and you just slap it a bunch of other places and kind of flip it around a little bit. But I thought I'd at least share that so that I know a lot of writers don't usually see a lot of this stuff unless you've actually published a book like this. So it can be helpful to kind of see what we're talking about when we're talking about like the metadata and the sheets like this. So you can kind of get an idea. It's like, oh, it's just, the one, like the 5-second blurbs we've been talking about and other things like that. So I thought that might be a good share.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you so much, Andrew. Yeah, it definitely helps to kind of visualize what we're talking about. I know a lot of our authors, especially new debut authors or authors who've only published kind of short things before and have never published a full book. It's a steep learning curve to learn everything that we're kind of asking for. So the more that you familiarize yourself before and ahead of time, the easier it will be on everybody.
Yeah, and also if you do get a publishing deal or anything like that, don't be afraid to ask questions. Because like as I'm sure most of you are aware, like if you know something, you know it, and you assume everyone else knows it. So it's like we're just like la 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 metadata la 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 la, and you're like, huh? So that's why I like showing it's like, okay, it's basically just little snippets of what do I think my book's about? Like what are the taglines? What do I think might get people interested in? It's like if my book's like a fantasy hack and slash, a tagline might be like Conan comes out and slashes and kills all the evildoers and saves the day. And it's like that's great, that works, but it wouldn't work for like a coffee shop romance story. So but like that's kind of the idea, is like just little like 1-sentence snippets, like what's your book about, and you could write 5 or 6 of them, and that's kind of the metadata that publishers are looking for, especially for books. Obviously for short stories and poems, if we don't do stuff like that, but if you have tags, we will gladly put them on our post.
We got another question that circles back to, we were talking about self-publishing, and did you say, Andrew, that you have to do it on Amazon to get it on Amazon? Would be KDP, I think is the service.
Yeah, I think so, unless you're famous or you have a book publisher. I think if you do Ingram, Amazon might pick it up. But I think the way, I mean, like, and I don't understand everything because there's so much to go through and all that, but I think Amazon's kind of like its own little ocean of stuff out there. So if you want to do self-publishing, you can do it with Amazon first, because they usually like to be first, and they'll take the ebook and the like the other stuff, and then you can go to like Ingram and stuff and probably get it in there as well. It's a little bit iffy, and I'd have to do research on it, but I think it's kind of like there's like 2 worlds. There's like the Amazon world and like the everyone else world. Okay. I think that sounds about right. Does that sound right, Monica?
Yeah, I think that like, yeah, as you said, Amazon does like to be first. But But I think that if you publish like on Ingram Spark, you can still get on Amazon, because I think Ingram Spark also does a lot of the distribution and the
Yeah.
metadata of what we were talking about. So as long as you kind of like just submit your metadata, then it just feeds out.
Yeah.
And it should list your book on Amazon. So so yeah, and if you're considering self-publishing, just really think about it, because most publishers don't take books that have already been like self-published. So if you self-publish something and it doesn't do as well as you wanted it to, at least at Red Hen, we wouldn't be able to take a look at it because it's technically already been published. So yeah, just think long and hard about if that's a road that you want to go down.
Well, okay, so if you're going to give advice, it takes a lot of work to self-publish, right? I mean, it's a real job. Would you say it'd be better to get it on Ingram, because then it would be easier to get into independent bookstores' shelves?
In terms of, so my colleague Toby and I do these kinds of talks a lot, and Toby is always very kind of stressing of starting with Ingram first, just because I feel like Ingram Spark has a lot more options than Amazon. I don't remember what they're called, than Amazon's self-publishing model.
KDP.
Yeah. So yeah, just take a look. I mean, Ingram Spark is, I haven't really obviously seen much of the back end of that, because I think that you would have to be self-publishing a book to like really explore kind of that. But I think that it's kind of like a nice one-stop shop for everything. So we at Red Hen would usually recommend checking Ingram Spark out first. Because I feel like, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead if you need to.
I don't know. I was just saying, I feel like there's just more flexibility there.
Yeah, it also really depends on what you're trying to publish too. Like if it's like like I'm just trying to think here, like if it's something that you like, if you have a large online following, KDP is probably fine, because they're going to buy it and you're going to get probably, I don't know how much money you're going to get from it one way or the other. But it really depends on what you're trying to publish too. Like if you want to be in bookstores, Ingram Spark is probably the best bet. If you don't really care, Kindle's probably fine, because a lot of people, or sorry, Amazon's probably fine, but you can get onto Kindles, and that's I think one of the biggest e-stores. It also, like, you know, some things like if you're trying to publish certain genres, like I'm thinking, oh gosh, what am I thinking? I'm totally gone, but like it really depends on what you're trying to publish. Like genre stuff may do okay on Kindle. It may do fine in Ingram too. And it also depends on your audience, like how many people you know, and kind of what you're trying to go for. Like if you only want to do ebooks, Amazon's probably fine. If you want to do physical books, Ingram Spark is probably better, because it will get into bookstores. If you don't care, I mean, Amazon's probably easier to do.
Easiest, yeah.
I'm gonna complicate this a little bit, because Perry just said that they were going to move to England, so this might be a whole different conversation. I don't know if KDP and Ingram Spark are in England.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I could say something. I've actually had a couple children's books published in Amazon. The best thing about it was, and I never even knew about Ingram, so I'm just like, woo, over the top of my, but the nice thing about it is I didn't have to spend any money. I mean, I remember back in the day, it was like vanity publishers would publish your book and you'd have to give them thousands of dollars and they'd give you all these copies. But with KDP, what happened was, and I actually had a cousin or relative who did my illustrations, and I paid her for it. We have a contract. So I did Lost in the Mess, and she did all the pictures. I did a couple of children's books. So I can get the pictures done on in a book, right? I can get it published. It's published so people can buy an electronic version and people can buy a physical version. And I actually have a friend in England who could buy it from KDP in England. So I don't know if Ingram does that, but it was like nice because I could just, without paying any money. The biggest problem was I had to read, like, there's millions of pages and I had to figure out which pages pertain to me and then figure it out. And when I put it in Amazon, I actually had to create 2 completely different files. Like if you want it published electronically, you do it this way. If you want it published physically, you have to do, it's not like, okay, now I'd like it published both ways. No, you had to do a totally different file under a different program to do that.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, for somebody who's not, like, I really wanted this published and I wanted like friends and relatives to be able to get it and, you know, to sell it myself and things like that. It worked out okay. And also I didn't even know about Ingram. So it's like, and for each one I sell, like with the electronic one, they sell them for, it's not very much. And yet I make, you know, pretty good money for each one. I make several dollars. And for the physical one, you know, it sells and I get like $2 or $3 every single copy. And I had published with Albert Whitman a long time ago, just one children's book. And for each copy they sold, I made like 15 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, I made more money way back with Albert Whitman because they sold a lot of copies.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay. So,
But you know, there's things like that to think about. And Red Hen is a totally different market where people are trying to take off as a different type of writer.
Right.
yeah. Okay. So we have a question from Marianne.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this. I'm in a writing group and all of them are published authors. And so I've been learning a lot about this whole process through them. And I was floored just, I think 2 months ago was the first time I heard that they had all sent out their manuscripts to a minimum of 60 publishers. Some were 80 and maybe one was 100, you know, before they got a yes. And then the yes was to, you know, a place that charged them thousands of dollars, like Joy was just talking about. And so I guess, you know, so that was like mind blowing to me because I've been thinking of myself as a writer for a while, and this whole other side of the business is so new to me. So I just especially appreciate, you know, these kinds of discussions. But so, I mean, I guess maybe the impossible question is what spark or what kind of thing what sparks you wanting a manuscript? You know, what is that special thing about nonfiction, fiction, whatever it is, but is it exceptional writing? Is it a unique story? Is it all of the above? I mean, you know, what is it for you, each of you individually, that really, you know, gets you excited about a manuscript that you get sent to you?
Ooh,
Do you want to go first?
yeah, I'll go. Well, think about when you go to a bookstore and you go like, I want to read it. I want to get a new book. So you go to the bookstore, you go like, well, I'm kind of in the mood for a romance. So you go to the romance section, you kind of look around, nothing pops out at you. So I was like, maybe I wasn't in the mood for romance. So like, maybe I wanted to go look in biographies. So you go to biographies or whatever, and you go and you look through there and maybe you find something, right? So it's basically the same kind of thing. Is all these manuscripts are and like stories and poems are kind of pushed in front of our faces and we have to read them. Because we read so much, I mean, like I don't read as much now because I don't get into the stories as much, but when you have so much to read, if you don't grab me in that first paragraph, I'm sorry, Like I felt so bad the first couple times I just read through anyway, and my opinion never changed. So I kind of got over that real quick. So that's one thing is you need to grab the reader, and it like maybe I'm having a bad day and nothing's going to grab me no matter what. Sometimes that happens. So sometimes you get an editor on a bad day. Sometimes you get them on a great day and they'll read anything and they fall in love with it. It's kind of like, I mean, we're people, we're not robots. You know, there's no one magic formula. Otherwise we'd all be, you know, international bestsellers, right? But that's kind of thing is, what, like, is it sometimes not the best, like the best writing? It can be the most beautiful prose you've ever read and go like, this is a garbage story, I don't want to publish it. Sometimes the prose can be just, ugh, really? But the story is so much fun that you don't care anyway. So there's a lot of in-betweens and, you know, what have yous that kind of go along with it. But the most important thing is, like things that you can do for sure, proofread. Just make sure that you have it proofread a little bit. Like some people care about spelling mistakes and grammar. I care if it's really bad. If it's like, oh, they misspelled a one word or there's a period, 2 periods here, who cares? It doesn't matter. As long as what I'm reading, I'm enjoying. And that kind of goes into pay attention to what types of things we publish. So if you're not publishing sci-fi and you send a sci-fi story, the science fiction editors might love it, but the person who wants to read, you know, gritty westerns is not going to find that story particularly interesting. But yeah, it really depends on the day, the editor, how the person's feeling. And sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with your writing, right? But it's like, you know, we want to be entertained. We want to have, like, maybe we want to learn something. Maybe we want to enjoy a poem that tells us something we didn't know about the world. Sometimes we want to fall in love with characters that are really cool. That's I know it's not a great answer. It doesn't give you exactly what you want, but hopefully it helps.
Yeah, it really it is so hard to answer that question because unfortunately every editor looks for something different. So I know from Red Hen, our managing editor, Kate Gale, who's also a co-founder, she's the one that selects all of the manuscripts that we publish. And what she's looking for is books that she can't put down, books that she can't stop reading, books that make her excited. Like when she's read something and she's telling the staff about it, it is very clear when she's in love with it. And it's a mystery why she picks some books. And we often kind of have staff discussions in which we discuss the marketability of the book or like the success of the author before this manuscript came across us. Like, have they been published elsewhere? Are they brand new? We do accept debut authors, but we also take a look at kind of their presence in the literary community beforehand. Because if they're starting just from scratch, it's just a lot of hand-holding that we have to consider, which we're always happy to do. I love kind of that part of my job is kind of walking a new author through this world. But also it's a lot of time that we're investing in this author, and so it has to be worth it. So in terms of kind of like the content, Red Hen also like the spiel is that we're looking for, as Drew is looking for in East Jasmine Review, underrepresented voices, unheard stories, some examples of things that we've published that we haven't really seen anywhere else. We've published a gay romance novel in which one of the protagonists is an amputee. We published a fictional novel also about, I believe, not sure if she was gay also, but the author was gay. But a mother and her son who has spina bifida, and kind of like taking care of her son. We published memoirs, about kind of like loss and like familial relationships and stuff like that. So it's really kind of just about, as far as like what Kate is looking for, it's just about something that excites her. And I know that's, again, that's not really an answer. But that is, I guess that's something that you can kind of take with you as you submit your manuscripts to places. And if you get rejected, you can just think of it as like, this is not what they were looking for, or this, like, this didn't excite them, and you just keep going and you just try and find someone who will be excited by your work.
Yeah, and a good thing to do is if you're not sure about your own work, and like you can take it to a critique group and they may get excited. Sometimes they don't. If you like find, and I say always have a critique group that you can trust with your work, and then have some people who have no idea what a critique group is, who just like to read, and have them read your stuff. Maybe even if they don't like to read, have them read your stuff, because that will give you a really great idea. Like you're like, and you can be like, hey, you know, East Jasmine Review, or Red Hen Press. I sent this to my friend Bob, who hates literature and thinks books are stupid, and he really liked my story, so you might too, right? Like, I mean, like, you don't have, like, you could just put that in the body, you know, don't, you know, whatever. But like, that's kind of the idea is what do non-literary people think of your work? Because those are the people who are buying books, who are consuming literature. I mean, obviously there's the writers who do, but writers aren't your audience for the most part. It's
What's
gonna be readers.
interesting is I just found somebody like that. He's in my water aerobics class, and he's just talking about these books that he reads, and I'm like, hey, would you mind reading something of mine? You know, and so I sent him something, and he was a really good reader.
Yeah,
So
you need that.
So I'm so grateful for that. So thank you for those answers. They were so great. I have one other question. When you submit, are you submitting the full manuscript or just 30 pages, or, you know?
The guidelines will tell you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to, Monica.
Okay.
I had to.
That's all right.
No, it's true. It's true. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, just exactly what Drew said, because I don't remember off the top of my head what we accept or not. I'm pretty sure we usually prefer, especially if it's fiction or poetry, as full of a manuscript as possible. If it's nonfiction, I think we do accept kind of proposals, but it's pretty rare that we accept anything that's not ready to go. Mostly just because our publishing schedule is pretty full all the way up until 2024. So we're scheduling books out for quite some time. And we need to be sure that the books that we're taking now for all of those years in the future, that they're solid. And so if it's not ready, it just makes our decision making a little bit harder to kind of trust whether or not it's going to be great.
Yeah, and like, you know, have your book finished is good, but some publishers don't want to see the whole thing right away. Sometimes they want to see a first chapter, first 30 pages. Sometimes they want to see the first half. Sometimes they want to see chapter 7. I mean, probably not, but basically just check the guidelines, see what they're looking for, and that'll tell you exactly how much or how little to send. But the manuscript, if it's fiction, should be completed, at least completely written. You know, if you're not, like, if you have like 5 or 6 more chapters left to go in your critique group, it's probably fine to start sending it out. But as long as it's completely, like, it's like if you don't have the last half written, wait until you finish the book before you want to send it out.
Thank you both. That was great.
So Monica, I've got a question, then we've got another question after that.
Yeah.
Then for both of you. So I have been with your boss, Kate, a couple of times when she said, I'm here at this event or whatever, because I want that person. I'm trying to get that person onto our label. how do you get in a position where the publishers are chasing you as opposed to you chasing the publishers?
It's a great question. I think it's really just about making waves. It's about being published with other people. I'm pretty sure everybody that Kate has chased down has published books with other presses already. And they've started kind of making moves and then pressing people. This kind of makes it sound like she's poaching them, which she doesn't really try to, but I think that she really kind of just wants to make connections with these authors, whether or not it's to get them as a Red Hen author, or if it's just to get them as a friend, and then we can kind of do events with them and kind of like and use their community and their like star power and kind of get our authors like on that level. So it's really just about, I guess, pursuing your personal career and charting the skies.
Yeah, I would also say for small presses, because I can also answer this because I do go chase after people, and I'm really especially mad at Elder Zamora, who is not here, who I always want to publish more of, who never submits anything anywhere, and that makes me upset.
You think
But
you're upset with Elder?
No, we're all upset with Elder. We're all upset with Elder.
Do you know my story? I had David Foster Wallace come out to meet Elder Zamora, and he said, "I will champion you." And Elder said no.
What?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
So don't do that. Don't say no. But if you go to readings as if you want your poetry, small magazine, go to readings, go to events like this, which are already here, so I don't have to tell you to do that. But go to open mics, read at open mics. Before the pandemic, I used to go to probably one open mic a month. And I like people who are my friends know I do publishing, but I did never say it to anybody typically, unless I really like their work. I was like, hey, I heard you read. I really like that poem that you read. You should send it to me because I would like to publish it. And I've done that to, I don't know if anybody here I've told John to send me stuff, and he does because he's an angel like that. I think I published Monica too, right? I published you before.
I think so, not in the East Jasmine review, but
Okay.
yeah.
I can't remember if I did or I might have or not, but yeah, basically go to readings and stuff. Publishers go to those mostly because we're also writers and we like going to things like this. And if you wow us with a certain poem, we might come up and say, hey, is this published? And you say yes. We're like, great, that's awesome. And then we are sad on the inside because we can't publish it. But we're also very happy for you. But if it's something that we like, we're like, hey, I really like that poem you read. I really like that story you read. Send it to me. And it's like, oh, I already have it published. Well, send me something else because I liked your work. That's kind of the thing is just, go to readings, go to events. You don't have to go to a lot. You don't have to read a lot. Just go, and they're fun usually. And then you get to meet new people, make friends, and talk about the good work and the work that is not so good, which is always fun.
Yeah, that's a super good point. I personally don't really have any say in what Red Hen publishes, but I've been to readings where I heard incredible poets read, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have any book deals. But I didn't have the authority to be like, hey, can you like send us something? But I like wrote down their names, and then I passed them over to Kate, and I was like, hey, Kate, like I heard this person read. They were fantastic. Like you should check this person out. So yeah, readings for sure. Just sharing your work, because a lot of stuff, like especially for poetry, the impact especially for me, the impact of poems really comes forth when you recite them. It's hard for me to get like the true impact of a poem on the page. And so if you attend a reading, if someone attends a reading and they are just blown away by your performance and by the emotion behind your poems or even your prose, that is very clear, and we'll take note of that for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We've got another question in the chat. I've submitted my first collection to a publisher who rejected. They asked for a sample of 20, which is 1/3 of the full collection. Rather than sending in a section in sequence, I collated 20 poems which show the variety of theme and form. Do publishers prefer to be sent a sample that makes more chronological sense?
It's a great question. I'm not sure what Kate prefers, but I do think that it makes the most sense to send some variety of what you had mentioned of the theme and the form, just so that the publisher gets a better sense of what you're going for in terms of the collection. Oftentimes after we accept a poetry collection, Kate ends up reordering the poems anyway, or suggesting that the poet reorder their poems in the manuscript. So kind of just being open and flexible to doing that, kind of restructuring if the editor kind of feels like it needs to be. But yeah, I think that, and again, this goes back to what we were saying about guidelines. So I'm not sure if Kate's ever seen just a sample of poems, or if she only reads the entire thing. So it just depends on the editor and kind of what they're what they prefer. But I would definitely recommend just trying to send, if they ask for samples, just sending like the variety of your talents, so that
I would add a little bit onto this just because I think it makes sense as a writer. I've never obviously published like Niche Jasmine hasn't published a book of poetry, but if you send a variety of poems and every single poem in that variety is different, I'm going to be confused. So I would say if you have like I have a poetry book out that's 4 sections. So I would send representative poems of each section.
Yeah.
So if you have like a sonnet section, send 4 or 5 sonnets. If you have like free verse, send 4 or 5 free verse. Send like kind of groups in a variety. So if like your entire book is about like sound, you want to pick a couple of sounds like similar, and then a couple of sounds are similar, a couple of sounds are similar. Because if you send just a hodgepodge, that's what the editors are gonna think. It's just a hodgepodge of stuff that doesn't really relate. And it's like, well, is this a poetry book or is this poems this person wrote?
Right.
Which are kind of 2 different things. And the poems may be great, but if they're all very different, it's like, well, I can't put this in a book because I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where the breaks are. So like that's why like variety is great. But also the poem should have some like at least chunks of poems. Like if you have 4 or 5 poems and they're asking for 20, send 4 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 4, something like that, so the editors can be like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing here, and they kind of make sense. So that's the only caveat or kind of suggestion I would add on top of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. That is a very good point. Yeah, it's important for the editor to see the arc of your collection. And so it's hard to publish a collection of poetry that, as Drew had described, is just like poems that someone wrote. What's key about publishing an actual poetry collection is that we need to see a journey. And so compiling a sample that encompasses that journey or that illustrates, a direction is very important. So that's probably, highest recommendation.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take a quick look at, I have this book of Edgar Allan Poe's, and he had a lot of poems, and I don't know if they put any structure to it, but I mean, all of his stuff is similar. But if you just like get like any collection of poetry, like of like an author's collected works, they'll still even put it in sections and different things like that. So that's kind of like it's the same idea. It's not just like here's a bunch of poems and you read them.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah. Robert Frost said if you've got a collection of 20 poems, the 21st poem is how you arrange it, which is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so both of you have after you start publishing, basically start a relationship with the writer. I wonder if you could both kind of talk about what that relationship is, because I know it's very different for the 2 of you. or I assume it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could talk about what that relationship is and what you're hoping to get from it and all that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So I'll go to let Monica rest a little bit. So as a small magazine, really, like, there's not a whole lot of relationship you can develop with a small magazine publisher, but there is. I think there's one guy I published, and I think he was in Scotland. I'm pretty sure. And no matter what, he'd always send us 5 poems. I never liked all 5. There's always like 1 or 2 poems I liked. And he was a cool guy, so I'd always publish like 1 or 2 of his poems. No matter what, rain, shine, world ending, he'd always send 5 poems every single time we asked for anything. So I never met the person, never talked to him, but I was like, oh, hey, I recognize this name. I published him before. I remember I liked his poems, so I'll pay more special attention. That is probably the low-key relationship that you can get with a small magazine publisher, is just keep sending them stuff. Another thing is, if they have readings, go to their readings. Be friends with them on Facebook, be friends with them in real life. Like, I know John in real life. I don't know Carrie in real life yet. But like, there's a lot of people here who I've seen on Zoom, or I've seen in person, or I've talked to before. And it's like, oh, I recognize that name, I recognize that person. And if I recognize you, I'm gonna pay more special attention to your work. Versus just like some rando I don't know. Right. So that's kind of one way of kind of looking at it.
What if on their letter they say, Monica Fernandez suggested that I send you a poem?
Yeah, so if it's like, if I'm like just like do and I get something that says, hey, John Brantingham suggested I send you something, and it's like, oh, I know John really well. John is gonna tell me, like, that's all I need to know. John sent something, so I'm gonna pay special attention to it. So if you have like John here, for example, publishes a lot, and if he said, like, if the publisher who's published John before, or who knows John personally, is like, oh, he's sending them, and John knows his to be very vulgar, his shit. John knows the shit. I, as the publisher who know John, knows that he knows that, so I'm going to pay special attention to who he's sending. And like, if I like, that's very important, is to have those connections. Because John sent me people before. I'm like, oh, I really like this work, because John knows exactly kind of what we're looking for. And that's good too, is building relationships directly with publishers or with editors, and with their friends and the people who are in their circle too.
Yeah, well, obviously the relationship with author and publisher in my case is vastly different. As you all know, we have been kind of accepting manuscripts quite far out. The start of our work on a particular book starts 2 years before the book actually comes out. So even though we're kind of like accepting manuscripts for like 2024, which is 3 years from now, right now we're kind of just like negotiating contracts and stuff. And then the bulk of our work starts like 2 years before the book comes out. It travels through various departments before it gets to me. So I usually work with an author starting a year out, but obviously our editorial and production team have already been working with them for a year. And so the start of a relationship with an author is, it's very important. And this is going to sound very obvious, but it's very important to just be nice. Just be nice. It's like a lot, we get a lot of authors that, like, we understand that this is their work and this is very important to them, and it's they have a vision for what it's going to turn out to be. But we also know what we're doing. And there are, like, if there's a particular cover that they really want, but it won't work with our sales team or for various marketing reasons, it's just not going to work. You know, don't attack us. Don't think that we're against you or anything like that. We're all on the same team. We are all just trying to work and create the most beautiful book that will get into the hands of the most readers. So, and as Drew had mentioned earlier, also don't be afraid to ask questions. We're all working towards your success. And so it's really just about remembering that we're all on the same team. And often, especially for kind of like first-time authors or authors who have never really been published on a large scale before, just remembering that it's a partnership as well. So we do things for you, but we don't work for you, if that makes sense. So, you know, if you send us kind of demanding emails that we get back to you within like 24 hours, like we're working on 30 other books, 40 other books at a time. We do all that we can to make sure that our authors feel heard, seen, respected, all of that stuff. But also please just remember that we have a lot of other things that we need to be doing. So yeah, I mean, the best relationships with our authors are when authors are understanding of kind of our time limitations and are willing to do everything that they can to help support their book and support our efforts in terms of what we're doing on behalf of your book. So, and then obviously, you know, once the book is published, we're still your publisher. Like, even if you go off to another publisher or something like that, we will make sure that your book is in print forever, unless you tell us to stop printing it and are like, I want my rights back. Please don't distribute this anymore, which happens sometimes. But yeah, we're always still happy to kind of like be promoting your book. And even if you go on to do other successful things with other publishers, we will share that information. Like, one of our authors went from Red Hen to an imprint of Penguin Random House. And so she's been really kind of like taking off, and we're so proud of her. That is the goal. We really want to see our authors kind of like graduate from small press onto the big ones. And it's just so exciting when that happens. And so we always we share that news for the new book, but we're also like, remember us, like if you liked that, you'll like this. And we kind of like try and cross promote with Red Hen stuff. But yeah, so relationships are for life for the most part with the publisher, at least for Red Hen. And we work so closely with the author that, you know, that we remember things, and we work with the author so closely. And the author also works with obviously every member of our team, and our team work very closely with each other. So if something goes wrong with another team member, we all know about it.
And Monica would tell all the other publishers that she knows too.
we would, you know, we don't really like gossip, but sometimes like if there's a particularly abusive author, we're kind of just like, oh, you know, like, did you hear about this? Or like, just be careful with this person or something like that. And yeah, because again, like we schedule events with other authors from different presses. And so if we send one of our authors to someone for like an event and our author behaves terribly, it's like on us. We sent them to that press for that event. And so they're kind of like an extension of what Red Hen represents. And so it's very important to kind of like just keep that in mind. You know, and you know, vice versa. Like we do all that we can to make sure that we don't talk shit about you like in public or whatever. We're not like saying like all of this kind of shady stuff. If things happen behind the scenes, we're still like public facing. We're always just like very respectful, very promoting, because that's the job, you know. But behind the scenes, it's so important to just be nice. Just be nice.
Yeah, I would just add a couple things to that. Obviously, yes, be nice. And the big thing too is remember that we're people too.
Hmm.
I think I went to AWP and was listening to somebody talk or something, and some woman chased this poor agent or somebody into a bathroom and like shoved their manuscript under the bathroom door. Don't do that.
Mhm.
Like, but like also too, like even like, you know, Monica's saying like we cross publicize and stuff. So like that's also the important thing of getting into a small magazine too. Is like let's say, you know, John came out with a book, and I as a publisher can be like, oh, we'll do a review of it on our website. We will be like, hey, remember when John published some poems? He's got something new out. We can do things like that. We don't always know because we don't have that deep relationship like a book publisher will. So reach out to the small presses you published in. And if they don't do any promotion, don't be mad. We probably want to, we may forget. Maybe our dog got sick. Maybe we had to go to work and our work week was terrible. We just forgot. There's all sorts of things. Like on our side of it, it's a little bit different than on the book publisher side. But you know, we've had like there's this this one of the guys we published, I think, is in Nigeria, and he was very sweet man. And he's like, you know, please do this for us. I was like, okay, we'll do it. And I feel so bad because we did do it eventually, but it took us forever because we kept forgetting because we're so busy all the time. So have some patience, just be really nice. Like if you don't hear anything in like a couple weeks, be like, hey, you know I sent this thing a while ago. Just want to check in, make sure everything's cool. Like things like that. Don't be afraid to check in. Don't be like, how come you didn't do this thing? And it's like, just like you're like, you know, sending this email to maybe not your boss, but like your friend or somebody who's like, you just gotta be nice to them.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But yeah, that just kind of add a little bit more to the publicizing of it. You can ask small presses that you've been published in. And if you build enough relationship with us, yeah, we'll help publicize. If you sent us like one thing 10 years ago, we may not remember you, but like, you know, if there's a continuing relationship, of course we want to root for you too. And I think that's the one thing that most of the people I've worked with, like we do, like as a small magazine publisher, sometimes I'll be like, hey, you probably want to get rid of this last line in this poem, or you might want to change a couple words here and there. Most, like I would say 90% of the people are like, yeah, cool, that sounds great. Or, oh, I have a specific reason for the doing this way. And you're like, oh, cool, that's fine. You explained it, we're good. Maybe we want to do this, that, and the other. Very small changes. If you start going like, how dare you touch my work? I'm the most greatest person of all time. Don't you know who I am? We're gonna be like, you know what? We don't want to publish you anymore. Bye. Because it's just too much of a headache to deal with. And maybe we'll publish you and we'll just forget about it, and we'll put you on our like, oh God, this person sent to us again. We're not going to bother. We're just going to auto reject.
Yeah.
So, and like, you know, publishers don't gossip, but it is a very small industry, and most of us, I mean, I don't know, obviously everybody, but it's a small industry. Word will get around if you're so. But most people here are nice, but we just say that because it does happen. We don't like it.
Mhm.
Could I say I've had a couple of people who I hired for Culturama who've acted immorally, unethically,
Hmm.
and I make that known if I so something about hiring. It's like, no, don't. That person's going to hit on your young students. That person's going to, you know, that kind of things.
Yeah.
And Carrie hands her hand up.
I was wondering if it's for like a magazine like Belly Review or whatever, if they've had your piece longer than the normal amount of time, is it okay to email them and say like, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The quick answer is yes. The longer answer is, hey, hey, you know, my name is blah blah blah, my submission is blah 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 blah, I sent it in blah 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 blah, it's been blah 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 days. I just wanted to check in on the status of my publication. That's basically it. Just give us a couple details when you sent it in. and then we'll take a look for you. So yeah, just make sure to give us a little bit of detail. Mostly, like, I know who Carrie is, but if your email is like pancakemama1234@gmail.com and there's no signature, I'm like, who is this?
Yeah,
Then it's gonna then I have to, like, if your email doesn't match the email that's in our submittable, I don't know who you are. So always just give a little bit of details. My name is Carrie. I sent in title or titles if it's poetry. I just want to check on the status. That's really all you need to do. And then you say, thank you for your time. Done.
Okay.
yeah, definitely. We really respond to those pretty quickly. I got a call from someone who was asking about the status of their manuscript, and since I don't deal with submissions or anything, I transfer that over to my editorial department, and they had said apparently they'd asked her to call back like in a month or something, and like the first day of the next month, like she called. So she had probably like written it on her calendar or something like that. So so yeah, I mean, we respond to those very quickly, especially if they're nice again. So
Yeah,
just respectful.
yeah. And if it's something like that, like if you get a response like, hey, we got it, we haven't made a decision yet, sorry, that you might get something like that,
Yeah.
just be like,
Yeah.
okay.
There
And
was
then
there was one person that followed up, but it wasn't really like I'm just checking email. It was you've had my manuscript for 6 months and I want my money back email. And obviously not a very great impression, to be angry right off the bat. So just like check in first gently, and then, if we don't respond or anything, just a little bit more firmly, just keep it civil.
Yeah, and if you feel like like, oh, they're holding on to it forever, I need to do something else with it, you can just be very respectful, like, send an email like, hey, my name is blah blah blah. I sent you this, several days, 6 months ago. It's well past the time. You haven't got back to me. I sent you a couple follow-up emails. This is just to let you know I'm withdrawing my submission. It was, a pleasure to not work with you or whatever. Just like something like that, where it's very just respectful, like, I'm just withdrawing my manuscript and this, leave it at that. Or maybe like, I might send you something in the future, whatever. You don't have to do that, but as long as you are respectful about it, we're not going to be upset.
Yeah.
Excellent. We have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, or if you'd like to even describe your manuscript and ask them if this is right for them. I just put you two on the spot.
Really?
Questions? Okay, Kate has questions.
It's not a question. I just want to say to Monica and Andrew how much respect I have for what you do. A friend who was a graphic designer and I started a small press here in New Zealand. Wow. And the amount of work and the deadlines that you work to, I think we managed to bring to fruition 5 projects. And
that's a lot.
It was so much work. And
Yeah.
she had children at home. And so we had to just fold because we absolutely were working our brains out. And I, as a creator, had no time for my own writing. It was all about what we were publishing for people. And I thought, thank God we have people like you, because it was way too much work for the two of us. So thank you. And I totally respect what you do.
Oh, thank you, Kate. And that is like, if you, like, I know Carrie was talking earlier, like if you're looking into trying to be on the other side and be in publishing, I always tell any writer, if you have the time, volunteer for an organization, at least try it for 6 months, maybe a year, just to get a little bit of the experience on the other side, because that's going to give you so much more insight, so much more ability into like, oh God, this is so much work that you like Kate was saying, it's not like you should have respect for people anyway, but it gives you, it doesn't give you the respect, it gives you the understanding of exactly what's going on the other side.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're just a writer, sometimes you just don't, like, you hear it, but it doesn't click. So it's always good to just to try it out or kind of play around a little bit in that section, kind of what that's like. And it is very different. It is a lot of work. And the reason we do it is we want to publish people, right? We want to get work out there. We really want to root for the writer. As Kate probably like, yes, that's why you did it. You wanted to root for the,
Yeah.
There's so many cool things. It's like, oh God, I wish I could just do all these really cool things and get all these works out there. And
Yeah.
that's why we're in it.
Well, and Monica with Red Hill, you're just like, wow, you had what, 20 people that are on staff plus a lot of interns. It sounds like it takes a ton of work to do that. And then Andrew, you've got just you and a couple of people. It just seems like a second job.
Yeah, so there's me, and I think there's so when we published our book, there was 4 of us
Wow.
to publish a book. And I mean, thank goodness it's not like it was just like a collection of stuff. Like, but we had to read all the submissions, decide all the submissions, format the submissions, put them in order, choose a cover, print the book, read the book. And because we're like, this is Monica's probably like, oh God, you only did 1 pass. We did 1 pass electronic, 1 pass print, and then we published it. There's errors, I don't care. It took about a year just to get that 1 book out. And it probably would have been a little bit shorter had the pandemic not hit, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And like the fact that we got it out that quickly is pretty amazing, because we're I think all 4 of us were working full time. And most of the time it's like, oh, it's just reading a couple things here and there. And then like once it goes into production, then it starts to get a little bit crazy. But we didn't do a lot of promotion for it because, that's not our area of expertise, sadly. But there's a lot of work that goes into just making it, let alone marketing, promoting, all that other stuff. That's a new world of insanity.
Well, and like if you had 20 more people to help you, it might be easier, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, actually, I mean, so you published your book, Drew, was an anthology, right? It was like a collection. How many people were in that?
Let's see, there are, this is the one that got ruined, and it's my, as you can see, this is our notes that we make. Logo higher. It looks off center. We had, I want to say 30 or 40.
Yeah, so that in itself,
pieces.
with four people to get that out in a year is insane.
It might have been a year and a half, but still.
Yeah, we just published an anthology of Muslim writers, and there were like 65 contributors to that, and that took our team 2.5, 3 years, I think. So anthologies are a huge amount of work, and yeah, that's just and again, like our team, so we're lucky enough to kind of have different departments that break up kind of the life cycle of the book. So but yeah, it's a lot of work, and I'm so fortunate that this is my job. Like, this is my full-time job. So I can I only need to focus on kind of doing this for our authors. But I cannot imagine kind of doing that and working something else. But also, Kate, as you mentioned, like, I haven't written in like 2.5 years. And I NaNoWriMo started, like a week ago, and that was my motivation to kind of be like, I'm not going to do 50,000 words this month, but 200 words a day is more than what I've been writing in the past 2 years. So it's the little things. So yeah, and it takes a while to kind of get your creative head back after working
Yeah.
full time in this industry, because you're kind of all just thinking about logistics and the marketability, and it's all just like in your head, and you're like, can I even write like passionately anymore? Am I just writing methodically? And then if you write methodically, or if you write to like a formula that you think is working, it's not good. Like I've tried to do that, and like I've tried to write what I think people will want to read, and it's not good. You need to write what you want to read. You need to write what you need to read, and then worry about everything else later.
Yeah, I think the secret we did, how we got it out so fast, is we actually offloaded proofreading onto the submitters.
Mm.
So especially if it's a smaller press, what we do is we say, like, hey, we put your story in, here's the electronic version, make sure there's no errors.
Yeah.
If you find anything, let us know, and then we'll correct them. So sometimes you might get an email like that from a publisher, is like, hey, just check your work, we're about to publish it.
Mhm.
And usually we'll give you a month, because we try to, like, we know you're busy too, we're also busy, so we try to give you a month. Sometimes it's a couple weeks, but it's like, hey, if you find anything, like, we'll try to find it. If we don't, your story may come out with errors, sorry.
Mhm.
So sometimes if you're working with a smaller press, before we publish, we might send you like, and usually it's actually really helpful because it's in a different format than your word processor, so you
Mhm.
can usually find your errors too. So, if you get an email like that, just make sure to get back as soon as you can so we can correct all that stuff. It's East Jasmine Review, Lavina.
Could type that in or something.
Yeah, it's a magazine. Okay, so we have 2 minutes. Can you give your best 1 minute advice to the group?
1 minute advice. I don't know, just love your work. I think that's the most important thing, is to love what you're writing, and trust that it will find its way to someone who will love it just as much as you. And if it doesn't, find its way there in 50 submissions and 80 submissions, don't give up. It will find where it needs to be.
I'd also say the same thing, especially as a writer. Don't worry about perfection. Don't worry about what other people are going to think. Worry more if you're having fun doing it, because if you're having a good time, if it's flowing, it's going to come across the page.
Mhm.
And also, take classes, have fun in those classes, absorb information, but don't try to write to the information. Just keep it in the back of your head.
Mhm.
It just takes time. But yeah, enjoy doing it. Write when you can. Write whatever you want. Not all of it has to see the light of day. And also, one thing, every single thing that you write is not a waste of time, because
Aw,
it
I
gets
love
you
that.
to a point where the writing that you do can be published. So everything is still a journey, even if it never sees the light of day and you put it in a damp, dark basement or in a fire, it was still worth the time you did.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate both of you coming out, and online, as it were. And thank you for coming. Next up, we have Scott Noon-Creeley, and he's going to show you how to use art to write your next story poem.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, thank you. And if you, I'll pop my email in here. If anybody has any other questions, I'm pretty quick at email, so feel free to send me anything. This is my favorite part of the job, is like teaching people, or or just offering advice, giving people kind of like an inside look at how to get ahead. So send me anything, and I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I put mine in the chat as well.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.